Yes, you are now listening to the sounds of Sports Reports as ordered. And these sounds are brought to you by the Even Kill, one and only. Born in Texas, raised in VA, representing New Jerusalem. And he got all you perverts covered because cheerleading started at the University of Princeton in 1869. So thank New Jersey for some ass shaking. He is Mr. Logical. And he does not allow you to bring feelings to fact fights.
Don't do it.
And of course, it is I, your unorthodox statistician, going left so much you thought I was southpaw. And what you see on your screen is correct. Jim Jones is better than Cameron. I came to this conclusion about 2 years ago, even though I still love Flea. I'm just saying. I'm 2-5. We're going to get this started with Get It Off My Chest. We're going to talk about the college football playoff bracket. We're going to talk about contenders or pretenders in the NFL. But Mr. Logical is going to start us off right about now.
Yeah. Another week of sports, another week of craziness, another week of people, just kind of acting a certain kind of way. But the main thing I want to focus on family. I've had, everyone has ups and downs in their life, but I have had deaths in my family. My sister, my mother both passed away from lupus. And my mother passed away August 27th, 94. My sister passed away August 30th, 2000. That was a couple of weeks before my birthday. And then, things kind of lumped together. My middle son, his birthday is the same day that my mother. So it's like a lot of stuff kind of lumps together. It's also the same for me in December. My cousin Kevin, call him Fever Man, Kevin Lee Mason, KLM. He was a couple years older than me, and I used to copy him to the T. Anyone in my family would tell you, if you saw Kevin, you saw Ralph. You saw Ralph, you saw Kevin. If Kevin was wearing something, Ralph had the same thing on in a different color. If we wore the same size, Ralph was going to wear it after Kevin had it. Oh, you need a haircut? Kevin going to cut my hair. Oh, Kevin talked to this girl. I'm going to talk to her. I'm going to figure out what did he say to her, and I'm either trying to get at her or her little cousin or her little sister. I'm trying to figure out what he's doing. I'd watch him from afar. I watch him up close. His mannerisms, literally, it was so on point that my man, two stomach, he said, we sat down at the basketball game, and I flipped my shirt up so I wouldn't sit on it and wrinkle it. He looked and said, man, you even flip your shirt up like him. So, I literally idolized Kevin my whole life. So he passed away December 6th, 2014. My daughter was born December 8th, 2018. So she celebrated her birthday. She had a dope birthday weekend. I got the FaceTime. She lived out of state. My sister would have been 48. She was still alive yesterday. And then today is my aunt's birthday, which is ironic. My daughter looks a lot like my aunt because my aunt's light skin, my daughter's light skin. So my daughter looks a lot like my aunt. So them having birthdays suited apart is great. I called her tonight. I told her about the show. Hopefully she's watching live. If not, we'll clip it and send it to her. But Alice, I want to wish you happy birthday. So December's
happy birthday.
Month. Yeah, so my cousin Kevin's birthday is, December 22nd. And my aunt's son, Daryl, Bub in the club, we call him. He answered the phone. His birthday's at the end of this month. Everybody's asking when I'm coming home. So just want to make sure everybody, you connect with family. I know we're going to have a lot of conversations over sports, and there's going to be arguments and who should be traded here and who's washed. Just focused on the fact that, everybody's not going to be here forever. So enjoy the family while you have them here. You look around my house right now, I got 4 kids, grandkid. I got a dog. My son's girlfriends are here all the time. It's chaos, and it's the beautiful chaos of a life that you should enjoy. I enjoy it immensely, even though I do yell at them constantly about not taking out the trash. But I'd rather them be here creating trash in my house and not being here at all. So shout out to family. Shout out to mine for her birthday. Yeah. But now let's get something really off my chest.
But how can you hear that and not review, subscribe, share, and rate? How could you not do all the free things, which are also all the good things, Mr. Logical?
I mean, this is a show about family. It's about honesty. It's about family. We don't just yell and just we don't run up here with all feelings. Like I feel a great deal of love for my family. Like I said, my son plays sports. If he played badly in the game, I tell him. He rarely does. My oldest son, when he played badly in the game, I tell him. Rarely happen. I have superstars. You're welcome, Northern Burlington. But when I'm talking about the family I pick, I'm talking about the Atlanta Falcons family that at tender age, 9, 10 years old, saw Deion Sanders coming out the smoke, high stepping, number 21. I was like, silver pants, black jersey, black helmet. I'm like, who is this dude? I'm following this team. So for 30 plus years, I've been riding with the Falcons. Super Bowl disappointments with the safety, trying to get a hooker the night before the game. Then they get mollywopped by John Elway, slightly overrated quarterback. It is what it is. Yeah, don't get me started.
Don't get me started.
But as we travel through this season, I am never going to be a person that tells you I hate being right because I love it. I'm not gonna lie. Anybody they know, anyone who tries to give me advice, they know I love being right. Sadly, I was spot on with Atlanta from the time of the draft, my preseason assessment, and pretty much all season long. The last 4 years, they've had first round picks. They've taken luxury picks versus logical picks. They took Penix as a future expectation of a luxury. Like, hey, it's going to be a luxury to have a quality backup quarterback in the event that our current quarterback goes down, especially one coming off injury. Yeah, that sounds good for another team, not the one you're trying to build. Last year they took Bijan Robinson.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't need him. You had Cordell Patterson and Tyler Algier both go over 1,000 yards.
There
Didn't
was
need
a
none
third
of
one
them.
too.
Yeah, and then they took the year before that they took Drake London
Mm-hmm.
when they were in the top 10 and they needed a defensive presence. The year before that they took Kyle Pitts. Now I give you Kyle Pitts he looked like an all-world potential pick in that 4. I know it was high for a tight end, but I think that made a little bit of sense. But they never game planned to get him the ball. I've watched so many games in his 4 seasons that he's been in Atlanta, and I don't recall, and I could be wrong, but I doubt it, a single first quarter where they attempted to throw him the ball 3 to 4 times in quick situations, especially when they recognized that we didn't have another wide receiver. So they were putting corners on him. Like, let's get him in motion. Maybe we can get a safety or linebacker matchup with him, get him the ball early. It doesn't happen. Even this last week, he caught his first pass, 7 minutes left in the fourth quarter. So what I'm saying in Atlanta is that if I can sit here in my house in Jersey and pick out where your flaws are.
Caleb Huntley. That's what I was thinking about.
Oh, yeah. So if I can find your flaws from here, Brian Flores, probably one of the best defensive coordinators this year, is going to be able to figure it out. And Kevin O'Connell, one of the best offensive minds in the last few years, he's going to be able to figure it out. There was a play at the goal line where I think Sam Darnold had 5.5 seconds to throw the ball inside the 10-yard line. You don't need that many defenders because you have the back line. You can get a little risky there, but you get no pressure in the middle because you draft a defensive end and try to make him defensive tackle right before the All-American defensive tackle goes
Johnny
in
Newton.
the draft. Then you go, you don't pick a proper lane. Like the last 4 years, you should have had either the best offensive player on the board or the best offensive lineman. At 8, you've had 3 years in a row, 8, 8, and 8, and then 4. So none of the people you picked in those spots are contributing to their position that they were drafted at. Bijan Robinson's a good player, but he's just good. But none of the pieces around him make it easy for him to get in space because you have a 6'5" wide receiver you drafted in the first round, top 10 overall. That can't be outside coverage. You can't put him at X or the Y. You got to put him at the Z. You got to put him in the slot. You got to match him up. You're moving him around, but you put Cal Pitts on the outside, hoping he can beat the corner that your wide receiver you drafted can't beat. And I'm sitting here like, who's calling this stuff? Who's not seeing this stuff? And it's like I'm sick of the BS. I get it. I don't like calling for people's jobs, but either you need to get a guru in there that could do some mentorship, or you got to replace these people. And I get Raheem Morris just got his deal. Listen, Arthur Blank, you own Home Depot, raise the price of lumber $2 to $3 to get your extra money to pay off his contract and send him out. Send a GM with him, send a president player personnel with him, and go find an organization and some people that can really put together a team with an actual plan. There's no use of having safeties in the back end and defensive ends on the outside if the quarterback can just slide to the other side, step up, and find somebody underneath. You got two great safeties. Yeah, no one's going deep. And when they go deep, the corners falling down. It happens every week. And now you got a quarterback, 4 straight losses. He has 8 interceptions and 0 touchdowns. Meanwhile, Sam Darnold, who was a castaway, yes, he's been up and down with every team he's played for. He threw 5 on Sunday. Like, come on. Like, at some point, it has to be recognized
No
that
touchdowns since week 9, leads the league in interceptions now with 15.
Multiple fumbles. Just he looks out of place. He looks like he's in his head.
So,
and I like him as a player, but like as far as this organization, you got to go ahead and.
Well, let's stay there. Let's stay there. Is it Penix time, or should we just wait till next season, give him a full off season, and then he starts next season, or just let it play out? Kirk starts another year. Where you at on that?
I'm figuring out how we get the Daniel Jones situation where you Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, just cut it and cut your losses.
Oh, just all together.
All together. Because it's rare. I'm 43. If you took my best physical prime, 23 to 29, I'm never going to get back to that level of stamina, no matter how hard I try. From all the partying I would do, drink all night, hang out all day, doing this, running here, running there, I'm not going to get back to that no matter what. And if I decided, you know what, this year I'm going to try. And I started in January and I'm trying to get back to that. And it's like, hey, man, this is you taking naps like this with your arms crossed at 10:30. It's like you're not going to get back. Like it's recognized. Like you're not going to get back to that prime. You're just too old. Time waits for no man.
So
it comes for everybody. And it's time. Like his time is up. He's not going to get better.
So speaking of Raheem Morris, you mentioned, of course, this is year one. So I don't want to overreact. What kind of grade you giving him?
D.
A D. Okay.
But that's the thing. It's not year one for him as a coach.
Right.
It's what you expect. Like I expected this. The offensive coordinator, I don't think is creative at all. I don't think the players that they brought in, even it's like I get it if you had a team, but you're decimated by injury. Your weapons are injured, and you're down to, or you don't start the year with your back. Like for instance, Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, I was gonna say
didn't have McCaffrey, was losing guys in and out. Ayuk's out. Brock Purdy's a decent quarterback, but he knows ways to get guys open. He knows ways to impact the defense with his play calling. Atlanta's in the same boat that they were in Arthur Smith. Sometimes coaches just think plays work because schematically it's supposed to beat X coverage. Like, oh, we're in man-to-man. They're going to go zero coverage. this play should work. But it's like, okay, cool. Where are your playmakers here? Like, oh, I'm going 5 wide. I got Bijan out, out wide. So Kurt has no protection. Okay, cool. Yeah, it'll look dope if the 5 offensive linemen can hold up with the 6 guys that they're going to bring. But we know that's not the case because the right tackle is terrible. The left guard is awful. And the left tackle is only out there because the last name is Matthews.
Okay.
So, yeah, it's like, oh, they're going to go and cover 0. Okay, that's cool. He can't get the ball out.
Well, speaking along the same kind of lines that you're talking about, where does Gang Green go from here? Where does Aaron Rodgers go from here?
I think I need to go on Indeed.com, make up a job posting called every fan's angry voice. You can hire me to sit in your meeting when you talk about what you're going to do with these players. You're billionaires. You're billionaire owners. There's no need for you to keep paying these millionaires to be mediocre. You're not saving yourself any money. Your capital gains everywhere. You're not paying any taxes. You're going to be fine. Cut your losses. Get rid of the staff that Robert Saleh brought in. I wouldn't even interview anybody that's currently on the staff. You already fired the GM. Get rid of the quarterback and start over. Hire a GM, have him get you a coach, and then get the best available player you can get going forward next year.
You know how much money Aaron Rodgers made this year?
If I had to guess, somewhere 40, 47,
38,
47,
38. You know what I mean? And look, he's had moments, where it looks okay. But back to your point earlier, he ain't 25 no more. This isn't 2019 or 2020 anymore. Matter of fact, you're looking at him this year, 2,966 yards. Not bad. 20 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Not so bad. Kirk Cousins would take that. You would take that for Kirk Cousins right now. But going back to 2022, before he got hurt last year, he had 12 picks. And between that season and this season, those are the most picks that he's thrown since 2010 in a season. So slippery slope here because great player, all time maybe even, but not now. So you brought in Garrett Wilson, offensive player or offensive rookie of the year a couple of years ago. You brought in Breece Hall, love Breece Hall. He had the injury, but love Breece Hall. You brought in Braylon Allen, so you got a nice 1-2 punch that should last you the next 6 to 7 years potentially. Why waste that time with this old ass fart that walks around moping and grumpy, whining and bitching all the time? You know what I mean? When you got these young players who are supposed to be learning how to win. Now, he's a Super Bowl champion, but that Super Bowl was many, many moons ago.
Yeah, my son is a sophomore in high school, and he was barely standing up.
You know what I'm saying? I had an afro when he won that Super Bowl. You know what I mean? So that tells you right there where we are. This is his lowest.
I didn't own a laptop when he won that Super Bowl.
This is the lowest completion percentage that he's had since that 2020 MVP year. So everything is trending downward. And you went out and got his favorite toy, Devontae Adams. You brought him in a couple of weeks ago. No, ain't no pause on that. When you saw that video they put out, there ain't no pause. This ain't a Dipset moment, but you went out and got his favorite toy. And what has it done? You fired Robert Saleh, who you had talked about was going to get fired.
Yeah.
They fired him. They beat the Texans, and it was like, whoa, are we on to something here? No, you ain't on to something because you still ain't shit.
3-10.
Eliminated.
And this is something else that it's like, it's not as if these teams that are in these positions are alone. The Jets can look at multiple situations. You can look at Peyton Manning's last year in Denver. They benched him for Brock Osweiler. Peyton Manning's last year's 9 touchdowns.
Water.
9 touchdowns, 17 picks. Yeah, they won a Super Bowl, but that's because Von Miller was ripping the ball out of Cam Newton's hand like he was, handing the ball off to him.
Speaking of Zach Wilson, real quick. Speaking of Zach Wilson, Isaac, what you doing, bro? You know that man transferred already.
I would go. Well, it's probably going to be a whole the whole new regime.
Well, no, he said he's coming back next year. Whittingham's back next year. Yeah, he's back next year.
Cam Rising is coming back, so Kyle's like, listen, I'm going to get one of these transfers and try to really win the Big 12.
But yeah, Zach Wilson had a better stat line last year. Zach Wilson had them on. Well, I ain't gonna say he had them. With Zach Wilson, the team was on the doorstep of the playoffs.
I mean, let's calm down.
They were.
The team was what the team was because sometimes. I give you an example, real quick. I remember I was in Germany, and this guy he was active duty, but his wife made a lot of money. I think she was like a lawyer. So they had the big Escalade before anybody else really seen one, and they brought it to Germany. So everybody walked out the club, and it was like 8 dudes from Spain Island. We're at Ramsider's club. It was like 8 people posted up outside in front of this Escalade. So now you're all getting this attention, from all the girls coming out because they think maybe this is your Escalade. But what it goes down to is like Zach Wilson had nothing to do with them being. He was the reason they weren't actually in the playoffs because he couldn't make throws. He just was the dude standing next to the Escalade because the Escalade was the defense.
Well, that's what I said, not because of him. But all I know is what I do know is when Aaron Rodgers got hurt last year. Remember, he got hurt. Was it 3 plays into the season?
I think he got 4 plays.
They beat the Buffalo Bills in that game.
Yeah, and Josh Allen was throwing the ball to the Jets. I get it. Brooke Clock's right twice a day. The Jets have been poorly run and poorly managed from the time that they went after Aaron Rodgers.
Ever since Kenny O'Brien.
When they brought in Brett Favre, it's like, why are you bringing in a guy who clearly wanted to go to another team? He wanted to go to Minnesota so he can stick at the Green Bay twice. They go after the wrong things. They try to make this New York fan base. The New York fan base wants you to be a winner, not a gambler.
So what kind of
you to win?
So what kind of head coach can they get?
They're going to get.
Knowing the Jets, they'll hire Eberflus.
They're going to get a retread. They're going to get a guy that's been a coach before.
Hey, I heard Rex Ryan throw his name out there. He said he want to coach again.
He keep them chiclet teeth in the studio because he don't need to be on the sideline either.
Yeah, you don't want him near the cheerleaders' feet either.
So I think they'll get a retread guy, but they'll get the wrong one. They'll like I said, I'm banging the guy with Mike Vrabel. I would bang the gavel for Vrabel for any team that needs stability. I think
no. We're holding out. Mike Vrabel's going to Ohio State. Stop that.
That seems less likely. I would think that they would make a move like that, like get a stable coach, especially a guy that was like. I think Mike Vrabel was let go. I don't want to say unfairly, but prematurely. I think because they put players around him that he didn't want. I don't think he wanted Malik Willis.
I think it was time. I think they had got to a point where, you were making the playoffs. You couldn't get past a certain point. Now granted, it was because you decided to stick with the former wide receiver at quarterback. But, once they started losing a little bit, tailing off, it was like, hey, we're in a new era now. And that's where NFL teams mess up because you have these coaches. Everybody's not Mike Tomlin. There's only one of those.
NFL, I'm not sure who it is. I don't know if it's the owners.
Calm down, Mike.
If it's the GMs or who it is. But there's too many feelings at the boardroom table and in these meeting rooms to where they are ignoring logic. And we're seeing it now with the mic'd up conversation that we're having, the players kind of coming out and saying what they're saying out loud about players. We talked about the Joe Shane clip with John Mara, the president and CEO of the Giants, who flat out told him, if he goes to Philly, I'm going to have trouble sleeping at night. And then he still didn't take that information. Like, you know what? Let me engage just a little more. Like, nope, we're going to let you go. Like, based off of what? Your owner just said, I didn't want it to happen. You sat back. Your son told you he wanted a different quarterback and to keep Saquon. So everyone around you is saying this, but I think your ego is making you do other things. And I believe that ego is the problem. Because Vrabel got fired. Like, he got fired, and it felt like I'm
gonna let Logical respond to you.
Hold
on, not this one. Not this one. Okay. I got it in the chamber for you.
Hold on. Let me say this. But like, he made a statement to the reporters.
Damn, Mike stole my point.
At the end of the game, that pretty much let me know that there was conversations that he had with management ahead of the final game that he might not be here. And he said something along the lines, if I'm here Tuesday, I'll talk to the players, or something along those lines. Like, he knew something was up. And it was like, based off of what? You guys you drafted two guys he did not want. It was clear he didn't want because it was yanking him out of preseason games. Like, you're not even doing the shit that I want you to do in preseason games.
Right. And I think Vrabel's a damn good coach. I mean, they had Derrick Henry and not a whole lot of anything else, and he made stew out of shit, basically. But here you go, Mr. Logical.
What? Mike, you gotta let your biases go, man.
No, but Mike did say something that I do agree that I was about to say before he said it, but he beat me to the punch. No, I was going to say it would be so. I was going to say it would be so New York Jet if they were to hire. That would be so New York Jet.
Hold on now. Now you're going to sit here and say Mike Tomlin is mediocrity.
No, he doesn't like Kellen Moore. He's
Then I need you to preface this by saying I don't like Kellen Moore.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, he doesn't like Kellen Moore.
Magic. What are we talking about here? This isn't a fourth grade dance recital. You need a good coach that can be stable. Look at Tennessee now without him.
Watch Mike Vrabel win a national title at Ohio State. Watch Mike Vrabel beat Michigan.
All I'm saying is that teams are out here piecing these teams together in a way you wouldn't put any other faction together. You wouldn't put a friendship group together this way. Like, you would not show up to a base and like, you know what? I need 4 friends to hang out with. I need the 40-year-old master sergeant. I need the brand new airman fresh from tech school. I need the guy that's always angry and likes to fight, and me. Now we're gonna go out and hit the streets. It's like that group doesn't make any sense. So bringing in an old quarterback, a coach that was already on the hot seat, a GM he's made a few good picks, and then an owner that likes to just oversee everything and then takes the power away, you won't make that won't work.
Well, you got to remember, some of these organizations are just known for not making moves. You know what I mean? They gave up A.J. Brown in the middle of all that.
Who wanted to stay in Tennessee.
Who wanted to stay. Like the one person that wanted to stay.
And they trade him, and they drafted a guy that they thought could replace him because he was the same size.
All right.
That was an organizational move. That's not a smart move, but I think he still was a good coach. I think he's better than I would take Mike Vrabel as a retread coach over one of these new potential hot shot offensive coordinators, because you got to have the weapon at quarterback if you're going to bring in a first-time head coach who's only been an offensive coordinator. You got to have the playmaker you got to match the playmaker with the coordinator. Well, now you're going to make them head coach. So if you're in a position to draft Shador or Cam Ward, or if you think Jalen Milroe's a guy, if you think one of these guys coming out of college,
I've been hearing people say Jalen Milroe might stay and transfer, but we'll get to college later. I just wanted to say that real quick.
But if you have if you're in a position where we're looking like the Giants, Vegas, and who to be number one? Like, I think Jacksonville.
Well, right now the Raiders are number one, I believe.
Yeah, but
The
Jacksonville has
Jacksonville
their
won this
quarterback.
past weekend.
So if you're Kellen Moore and Jacksonville job comes available, at least they have a long-term, at least viewed as a generational quarterback in place under contract. You're not working with a guy that could be leaving like Tua in Miami with Mike McDaniel. So you spent the first 2 years under Mike McDaniel. Wonder if they were going to keep Tua. You know what I mean? So it's like, but it worked out because they went out and got speed. They went out and got the weapons they needed to make Mike McDaniel's offense work with Tua. I don't know if the Jets are going to do that because Devontae Adams not coming back. We're not Aaron.
All
And
right,
no new coach is going to sign up to coach Aaron.
So from my friends on NFL.com, I have here the playoff picture as of today. So, Mr. Logical, starting with the AFC. Right now, the Kansas City Chiefs would get the bye. Then you would have Buffalo, as you can see, against the Broncos here at number 7. The Steelers against the Chargers, the Texans against the Ravens. On the bubble, you got the Colts 2 games behind the Broncos, and they go to Mile High this weekend. And you got the Dolphins behind the Colts. Colts with the tiebreaker because they beat them when Tua was hurt. So, yeah, Mr. Logical.
The bubble's irrelevant. I think we got our 7 AFC teams. I think position might change.
All right. So
6 and 7, but that's about it.
So looking at that list, who are my contenders and who are my pretenders?
Contenders, obviously, you got to go with the Chiefs because they're the Chiefs. They seem to find a way to win. Steelers, your contenders because I think the way they're playing the way that the Steelers play. Granted, the 44-38 shootout with Cincinnati was uncommon, but them putting up 44 points where they had to, that worked. So I got Chiefs, Bills, Steelers, 1, 2, and 3. Those are your contenders. 4 through whomever, all pretenders. Right. That includes the Texans. Everybody's darling. They just have the worst interior offensive line play in amongst the playoff teams.
Well, the Texans got it coming up. I mean, you know what I mean? They got the Dolphins this week. You know, they go to Arrowhead. They got Baltimore on Christmas, and Beyonce can't save them. You know, and as I look at this, the Chiefs obviously have to be a contender just based off of experience, if nothing else. They are the reigning defending champions 2 times over, going for history. So if anybody has motivation, it's the Chiefs. Now, granted, I don't think that this luck or whatever you want to call it, these late game heroics and magic, you know, no pun intended there, but with the magic, you know, I think that it can't last, you know, because we know that in sports, as quickly as these things happen for you, it'll quickly turn against you as well. Now, the good news is, since Buffalo lost to the Rams the other day, that gives the Chiefs an extra foot because Buffalo beat them head-to-head. You know, so the Chiefs are in position to get that number 1 seed. They also play the Steelers here in a few weeks, who I do not think is a contender. I'm going to label the Steelers pretenders. You know what I'm saying? And it's not because, you know, of any picks that I made before the season or anything like that. It's because
Mike kills me with this ref talk.
It's because the Steelers, I don't know if I can trust them. They're the type of team that has to build leads. Like, I don't know if in a playoff setting.
But that's the way they play too.
No, I know. But that's what I'm saying. But there's too much variance. Like this week, you might win 13-10. Next week, you might need to score 19 and can't do it.
Yeah, but how do the Chargers do it? Like consistently, what can you can?
Oh, I'm gonna get to the Chargers in a second.
You know what I mean, like, so it's like that's the thing. I think with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers, one thing you could bank on is solidarity. I think they have great leadership on the sideline and on the field. Even with George Pickens' crash outs, by the time he gets to the post-game press conference, it seems like someone's let him vent that out before they put a mic in his face. Like, we could talk about the NFC, and I'll bring up that point later.
Well, I'm excited for Pittsburgh going to Philly this weekend. I do think that Buffalo is a contender because at any given time, they can have the best player on the field. You know, I know
Clearly,
Josh Allen is
they're
not
saying he's
better.
MVP. They're
I
saying
know
he's
he is not
MVP.
better than Patrick Mahomes.
Wait, hold on. Just real quick. Let's address that real quick. There's not much evidence to show that he isn't. I mean, it's not as if it's this gap where Mahomes is here and no one else is close. Josh Allen's accounted for more touchdowns since they both been in the league. Period. Like it's accounted for more touchdowns. Yeah, he has some struggles, but when it comes down to it, there's not that big of a gap. Mahomes has real just Tom Brady esque, Joe Montana esque pressure magic. I don't think Josh has been in as many situations, but just Mahomes just deals. Like even the game, the final drive against the Chargers, the scramble down the sideline where he actually took contact, he didn't tiptoe, he took contact, got hit, didn't get a penalty, and then making that guy miss, and then completing that pass to Kelsey. He has that. And that's the thing that I think separates him. But as far as like just being a player, I don't think there's a throw that Mahomes can make or a play or type of play that Mahomes can make that Josh Allen can't.
Well, and to Mike's point, it does help having Andy Reid, but I think that Josh Allen gets infected with Russell Westbrook brain sometimes. Like especially we talked about it a couple years ago where 3rd and 1, you know what I mean? You can do it with your legs, you can hand it off, he's going to throw it 40 yards.
Deep bomb to Shakir.
Yeah, you know what I mean? That's what he does. So, but Buffalo is a contender because they, if nothing else, have the motivation from the standpoint of the Chiefs have been the ones to pretty much end their season. Like they might have a Super Bowl right now if the Chiefs were in another conference or they didn't have to play the Chiefs in the playoffs. So, Josh Allen is having an MVP type season, but as they say, I got to see you do it when it counts. The Texans, I was big on the Texans coming into the season. Now I'm not because, as you say, as the evidence changes, so does my opinion. The Texans are just not. I don't want to say they're not a good team, but they're fortunate to be in the division that they're in. I'll put it like that.
Like this year, injuries hurt them. When you watch the game when they had like like the phrase "they're Avengers" when they had Nico Collins, Stephon Diggs, Tank Dell, he was dealing. CJ Stroud was dealing.
Who's this Q you talking about? Who is he?
Oh, Q.
Who's Q?
Hiding out.
I keep hearing this name, but I can't place it.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think the Texans are a bad team. It's just that CJ Stroud's been sacked like 19 times. It's this comparison between him and Bryce Young because that was comparison last year. So since Bryce Young's come back from being benched, like I think CJ Stroud's been sacked like 19 times and Bryce Young's been like 6 or 7 times. But like I said, he probably has one of the lower rated, probably like 28 to 29 rated interior line center guard, like guard center guard. That's where the games are won.
And that's the problem. You got the. I mean, like I said, they play Miami this weekend, but then you go Arrowhead and Ravens back to back. So, yeah. Luckily, the Colts are the second place team in that division. The Colts ain't shit, so therefore, no disrespect to Pops, but it just is what it is. The Ravens,
I don't know.
Contender. I'm gonna call them a contender.
You got to call them a contender because the dynamic players that they have on both sides of the ball. The problem is, I don't know who the voice is. I don't know we talked about Kansas City. Mike likes to give Andy Reid a lot of credit, which you can't deny. But Andy Reid talks to Mahomes, talks to Nagy, gets Kelsey involved. They get the offense figured out.
Shout out to Eric Bieniemy.
Defense, you go Spags, Chris Jones, Nick Bolton. Okay, what do we got going on? Let's figure it out. Boom. But the Ravens is like you have Henry and Lamar, and it's like, all right, get together, figure out what we're gonna do on offense. How are we gonna attack this other team? And then on defense, you got Roquan Smith, Lane Johnson talked about how his intelligence, how he was calling out the plays. He was like, it was a very Luke Kuechly, like, Hall of Fame level
If only he
kind
could
of.
play corner.
And it's like, you have so much talent. You shouldn't be struggling in games. Yes, NFL games are possession here, possession there. But there should be games where they should never be in a game where the final score is 19-16, 13-10, 19,
Well, the
30.
problem
Like
with the Ravens,
they should be really scoring when they need to get touchdowns because of what they have
well,
offensively.
speaking to your point about like who's the voice and all that, the Ravens have pretty much lost to every good team that they've played this year. Whether that's Philly, whether that's Kansas City, whether that was Pittsburgh, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? Like, so that's another psychological disadvantage that they have. Like, can you wait until the playoff to beat somebody decent?
Yeah, you can't. And people talk about, oh, they can flip the switch. That's not. You want momentum. You want consistency. You want to know, like, for instance, I think
Philly held them to 12.
Buffalo knows that on 3rd and 2, we can do some kind of rollout. And we got Dawson Knox, Josh Allen, Shakir coming on like a drag, and we can get this first down. Like, we know it'll work. 2-point conversion. We have these plays. We worked them all year. They worked. Some of these Ravens games where it's like you got 12 points, 13 points, 16 points, and then you blew out Buffalo. It's like, what do you guys have that that works other than this simple stat of if you give the ball to Derrick Henry 20 times, you win?
Hey, if the
they gave it to him 19 times.
If the NFL is rigged, Philly will beat Kansas City in the Super Bowl this year. The team that the three-peat started against ends the three-peat. Poetry.
If the
Poetry.
NFL is rigged, Dan Campbell will keep going for 4th downs in NFC Championship game instead of kicking.
Oh, well, then it's rigged because he gonna. You know what I'm saying? The Chargers. So the Chargers are one of these teams that confuse me because when I look at the Chargers, and I know you hear this more in basketball than football usually, but the Chargers strike me as a team that's built for the playoffs. The problem is, because their emphasis on the run, sound defense, they don't beat themselves. That sounds like a recipe for success in the playoffs. The problem is that Jim Harbaugh don't want to win games. Just like I talked about a few weeks ago against the Arizona Cardinals on Monday Night Football, Justin Herbert was putting on a clinic in the 4th quarter. And Jim Harbaugh said, you know what? No. We throwing it too much. Let's run this ball. Let's run some clock. Let's kick a field goal and give Kyler Murray the ball with a minute left. He did the same thing in Arrowhead the other night. Justin Herbert at one point during the second half completed 10 straight passes the other night.
Yeah, he was killing them.
Shredding them
tight
up.
end 84 Smart. He had he was killing them. He had 3 catches all year, and he was that corner route was killing him each side of the ball.
And then he starts to run the ball. You get a 3rd and 16. You're in field goal range already. So Justin, don't do nothing stupid. But nope, I'm gonna hand it off, gain like 2 yards, kick a field goal, and guess what? The Chiefs get the ball back with like 3 minutes left. We saw what this man did in 13 seconds. You gonna give him 3 minutes? So like I don't know.
They had pretty much controlled the second half. So it was like thinking that like they had 13 points and they had 13 points that Kansas City had to scramble for. Like I talked about, Kansas City needs. I need 2 touchdown drives in the first half that look like touchdown drives. I need a long conversion. I need a big play. I need to see these things if I'm a Kansas City fan or if I'm on the team. Like, okay, we got 2 touchdown drives and a field goal. So you're going to have 17 points. I don't want this. We look awful. We get 2 field goals, and then the last minute of the first half, Hopkins gets open and catches and backs into the end zone. Now we're up 13-0. Because when they came back out in the second half, they had nothing to sustain because it's like they weren't building on stuff in the first half. And I think that can be, if they can't turn it around or if they can't get maybe some guys back to her and out of position defensively or whatever the case may be, because they didn't look like they were going to be able to create any turnovers. Same thing what I was talking about with Sam Darnold having a bunch of time. It was that play that the touchdown pass to Quentin Johnson, I think Herbert had when he let the ball go, there was no one in his space. So he had it for a long time. That guy came across the corner, went to the flat, and Quentin Johnson was standing there wide open in the end zone. But he didn't. There was no pressure on him then.
Yeah, so I would like to call the Chargers
for me. Yeah,
I would like to call them a contender, but I just can't get there.
I think people will call him a contender because of the coach. And I get schematically, you need a good coach, but in the same sense, your coach has to trust that I have playmakers on.
Well, in a lot of ways, they're like Pittsburgh light. Where it's like, where I made the comment earlier about, can I trust Pittsburgh if I need points or if I need a long drive to get points to take control of a game?
Down 10, you just gave up a touchdown. Now you're down 10. 7.5 minutes left in the third. So that's a reasonable amount of time to get some points. But can you trust that they're going to go down? Just let's get this touchdown. Let's cut it to 3. Go back, play good defense, and then either tie it up and take the lead on this next possession.
Right.
I think Buffalo can do that. Buffalo down 10 can make that happen.
Yeah, and I'm going to call the Broncos a pretender. I like Bo Nix. I like their defense. I just think that they're a year early as far as where they are right now. So next year would be get this year under his belt, and I think next year the Broncos could potentially get into the contender category.
Miami's probably kicking themselves. I know this is a controversial topic, and I bring it up a lot. They're probably kicking themselves for putting 2 on IR.
Maybe
if they just would have said he's out for 2 weeks, and then gone to because they had I think it was 3 games, and then they went to their bye, and then he had to miss that next game.
Yeah,
they should have said he was out, taking those 3 games, and the bye. Because that's essentially his 4 games, worth as far as a calendar, and then he could have been back. You could have changed the dynamic of the whole season because the IR was only going to make him miss 4 games. So you had a bye. They should just put him on. They should just put him out. Well, it's not like you're going to bring in a bunch of extra players. Like keep him on the 53-man roster because the IR allows you to bring in another player. So what?
The Dolphins still got it in. The Dolphins still got it in front of them. But the problem is that they need Denver or the Chargers to falter, But they get the Texans this week. They get the 49ers banged up next week. They get the Browns after that, and they close with the Jets. So
listen, if Huntley had to play one less game, I think they'd be in a better position.
Yeah, and so we'll see what happens. Like I said, the Colts go to Mile High this weekend. So the Colts have a chance to get back into this conversation, especially if the Texans lose to Miami, lose to Baltimore, go to Arrowhead. So the Colts aren't necessarily...
But the passing game for the Colts is their Achilles heel.
Yep. And it ain't going to happen.
You can legit load. You can play 8 guys in the box, single high safety all day, and just make him make throws. You might get beat once or twice, but I would say single high safety all game long. I wouldn't go too high at all. I stay in the box so he can't run any draw plays. I stay in the box so he can't do a quarterback keeper. I keep a spy on. I would just literally make him. I would make his wide receivers beat one-on-one coverage or beat, this, like I said, one high safety.
Mm-hmm. So then over in the NFC, the Lions have the bye right now, but Philly is on them. Oh, yeah, is that right? Nobody is like Alex Orgy.
It's close. They're very similar.
You got the Lions they would have the bye right now. Philly's right behind them, and I mean right behind them. Seattle would host Green Bay just like they are this weekend. Then you got Minnesota with their 11 wins going down to Raymond James to play Tampa. You got the Commanders sitting there playing Philly in a rematch. You got the Rams a game behind the Commanders. You got the Falcons, right there as well behind the Rams. So all right, so Lions, I think we're both going to say that the Lions are a contender.
They're a contender. That 12-1 isn't fake. Yes, Chicago did help them.
Hey, you know who they got this weekend, right?
Chicago or Detroit? Detroit's
Detroit. They got the Bills coming in the Ford Field this weekend.
That's a realistic Super Bowl matchup. If I'm Dan Campbell, I don't pull out any tricks. I keep it simple.
Okay.
I keep it simple. I don't none of my trick plays with Penei Sewell, none of my Amon-Ra St. Brown throwing passes. I keep it burned simple because if you're thinking you're a Super Bowl team, you have Super Bowl aspirations. That team, it can be a team you play in Super Bowl.
Yeah, Philly's
so
got.
I'd keep some things tight to the vest.
Well, if I leave it up to you, this Philly-Pittsburgh could be a Super Bowl matchup too.
It's
all right. Before you even go there, question. So, and I'm only asking this question because of how last year ended. Are you a little concerned with the AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts stuff going on right now?
I'm concerned that NFL players are treating these post-game interviews like text messages that they could just send directly to the person they're talking about. I think that is, what's wrong. When he asks him what's wrong and he says passing, he could have said something like, hey, we got to find a way to make plays in the passing game. I got to ensure that, I'm running my routes appropriately, getting the right depth, giving Jalen a good target. It was a good win today. It was close. That Carolina team has been coming on. They're rallying around Bryce Young. Instead of being like passing, it's like, dog, you're the number one target. You're going to get the ball. The game plan. So, like, they're not going to not throw you the ball next week. So, saying passing as if you're being alienated from the passing game. Like, if you were like the third wide receiver and you were like, I'm open all game long, all season long, they never throw me the ball. That's one thing. But it's like you're getting the ball. You're going to get targets. Maybe Jalen will miss you. Maybe he don't want to force a turnover. Maybe he wants to, keep it simple and ride the wave. That's something you can talk to him about when the media leaves. That's the only part I dislike about it.
Yeah, I just think I'm just a little nervous with what happened. I mean, I don't really fuck with the Eagles like that, but I'm just saying, like, I like after what happened last year and how things, because we still don't necessarily know what went down last year, but we just know that the collapse came.
It was definitely like personality conflicts. I think if I had imagined, Jalen probably is. He's probably not with the tomfoolery.
He a damn thief is what he is.
He probably not with the BS, and he probably doesn't like.
If it wasn't for Jalen Hurts, Saquon Barkley would be having a Jerry Rice level season.
Yeah, but they call it, and Saquon's out there, and Saquon was mic'd up against the Giants saying, "Run it again."
Well, Saquon needs to be a little bit more selfish, you know what I'm saying? But the Seahawks,
he's the calming piece. I think that's going to allow them, because if all else fails, you could just give it to Saquon and keep the drives going, which would then open up the play action. AJ Brown gets his deep shot that he wants, because he could probably get 3 catches in a game, 6 targets. But if he gets 2 touchdowns on those 3 catches, he won't say shit about passing in the post game interview. So I like the Seahawks. I see them as pretender just because I don't. There's not a lot of evidence that says that they are going to be contenders.
Well, they're definitely coming on as of late, and I am excited for this game against Green Bay this weekend. I mean, not only is it the matchup that we would have today if it was the playoffs, but it's a matchup against a team that they're going to have to compete with. And how this is the thing with a young team, and with a new coach. I guess they're not young as far as quarterback, but
yeah,
how do you handle prosperity? A lot of teams flourish when they're in the spoiler role, when there's not much expectation upon you. But once you show a little bit of potential and people start to believe in you, how do you respond then? That's what I'm looking for out of Seattle. So I'm going to say pretender for now, but that defense, if it can continue the way that it's playing, the only thing I don't trust on that team is Geno Smith.
Yeah, but he has a little moxie to him. He has a little, he's been.
What does that even mean?
Well, he's been, been a cast off. Let's say I think they're one of the teams playing with house money. I'm not sure what the expectation level is, even from their fan base. I can't imagine because on these different platforms and different sports groups, there's not a lot of Seattle fans kind of screaming from the rooftop. I know one personally that retired last year. I used to work with back at Hill. He'll hit me up every once in a while. Like, he hit me up when Seattle beat Atlanta. Like he'll shoot me like a little message. But for the most part, I don't see a lot of their fans on these forums kind of like just screaming from the mountaintops. So I think they're just kind of liking where they are. And
I like Seattle doing well because it makes Mina Combs happy. Tampa Bay, pretender.
Contender. They're a contender to me because of their quarterback. I think he's one of those guys that you can count on for sure to play up to and beyond the level of the moment.
I think their secondary is as bad as he is good.
Yeah, there's gonna be, you got to have a flaw somewhere. I just feel like his capabilities, his ability to just be there, be the driving force, be the energy, be the personality. And like I said, I think he feels at home in Tampa. I think he feels it's like after he walked on at Texas Tech and then he got to Oklahoma and it was like, oh, they like this kind of Baker because in Cleveland, everyone kept telling him to tone it down, tone it down, tone it down.
Well, he better give the speeches. He better give the speeches because Todd Bowles is real Jonathan Gannon-like.
And sometimes that works. Like it's a marriage. Sometimes you need the introvert and extrovert. Okay. The introvert that says, you know what, let's stay focused here. And the extrovert like, listen, let's just go for it. And this is why. And the introvert's like, you know what? You broke it down. It makes sense. Let's go for it. But like I said, I like Baker Mayfield because there's quarterbacks that we can point out that are out of these 14 teams and say, like, I don't think that guy's gonna make the play you need when it's necessary. Like, I think people can look at Justin Herbert, like, I don't know if he can make the play every time. In the playoffs, Lamar hasn't been able to make the play. CJ Stroud, because of his offensive line plays, like, I don't know if he has the drive in him. Mm-hmm. I think down 6, Buccaneers with the ball, a minute 40 left, a timeout or 2. I'd have faith that Baker would get you in the end zone.
Vikings, pretender.
Contender for the same reasons that I think Tampa Bay is a contender. I like the quarterback. I like the marriage.
You don't like Sam Darnold.
The marriage between coach and quarterback. Not me. I don't want him on my team.
I don't. Nobody likes Sam Darnold.
Well, I don't know why. If you look at him this year, listen, I'm not saying he's MVP or anything like that, or maybe most improved. I can give him that award.
That glass slipper don't fit.
Okay, well, at what point is this glass slipper not going to fit at 11-2? This isn't SEC football. This is NFL football. And he's 11-2. I mean, he just threw 5 touchdowns 2 days ago. It's not like he struggled to their 11-2. Like, they were 5-0. He was throwing the ball over the place. I think he have the record for the longest touchdown completion.
I think that time is going to run out on them. Like, we saw this a couple of years ago, even though it was a different quarterback. The Vikings winning all these one-score games until they can't win the one-score games. Sam Darnold last week against the Falcons had that
by 3 scores.
Well, they did. He had that 5-touchdown game against the Falcons last week. That's obviously an aberration. I think
his passer rating wasn't perfect.
That's weird, right?
His passer rating was 157 point.
Yeah, it's like what 158.3 to be perfect. I don't even know how they came up with that.
I think he was like 20 for 29, 340 yards and 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, when I look at the teams on this list, like if he has to go to Seattle, for example, I don't know if I trust him to win in that environment. Because we got to also remember that he doesn't have much playoff.
But you don't trust the Seattle quarterback.
No, but I trust that home field advantage against a quarterback that doesn't have playoff experience.
Okay, I'll give you that.
You know what I mean? I think that they would lose to Tampa. Like, that's the first round matchup right now. I think Tampa will win that game. I think they can't beat Detroit. I think they can't beat Philly. Them in Green Bay is a toss-up, but I don't think Green Bay is a contender either. So I think that. Never mind, I ain't gonna say that. But the Packers pretender. Because I'm just not
pretender.
Yeah, Jordan Love, I think, used all his coins last year. Like, I think that
it's not like they're a bad team. I just think that
they're not a bad team at all.
It's just you can't everybody can't get a trophy.
Yeah, so when I look at the
teams are more locked in. Like the turnovers that he had earlier this year, he toned the turnovers down.
Well, I brought this up a couple of weeks ago where I said that their defense reminds me a lot of that New Orleans defense that won the Super Bowl back in 2009. They weren't necessarily a good defense. They were just very opportunistic, and they had the quarterback that would make you pay when you gave them opportunity. But over the last few weeks, just observing Green Bay, fuck opportunistic. This defense is not good. Like they have one or two really good players, and the rest of the defense is not that great. And yeah, that's a good point, Mike. Brian Flores has that defense humming. Bynum, is playing out of his mind. I love Van Ginkel. They have a few players that I like, but I'm more so just focused on Sam Darnold.
You're focused on the record. You don't believe that the quarterback is really as good as the record.
Right.
It's very similar to the 11-0 Pittsburgh Steelers that we saw a few years back.
Very similar to that.
It's very similar to the 12-1 Chiefs. It's like you don't think the record matches the team. And I give you that with Minnesota. But Minnesota has done it differently. Like they've gotten big games out of Aaron Jones. They just had a historic game with Jordan Addison and Jefferson. I just think, and early on in the season, like that first 5 games where they won, Brian Flores' defense, like the way he was disguising, his coverages, it was like I just feel like throughout this entire year, as we section off in quarters, every single quarter of the year to this point, they have shown you a different level of like why they are an elite team. Mm-hmm. They're just in a conference for some reason that I didn't see 3 teams with 11 wins at this point. And I think the Packers get that stop and they kick the field goal. They would have 10 wins. The Lions would have 11 and the Vikings would have 11 as we had this conversation today. So it's just the conference is just, like I said, on top of the fact with Philly with their 11 wins. So it's like it's just so many wins that you're looking at Minnesota like it has to be fool's gold. But if you break it down, there's a lot of good teams that don't have that many wins. There's a lot of teams that have quote unquote more talented quarterbacks that don't have that wins. There's a lot of teams that have coaches that everybody adores. People love John Harbaugh and Jim Harbaugh and a lot of these other coaches. Kevin O'Connell, for some reason, doesn't get a lot of love for Coach of the Year. And it's like Minnesota hasn't really been like this dynamic offense.
Yeah, he's like the one McVay dude that's holding it down.
And he gets looked over because it's like, it doesn't seem real because that team has been so poor.
Yeah, and Jair Alexander absolutely is the key to that defense. But when I think of Jair Alexander, I just have Austin Powers playing in my head. Daddy wasn't there. Because he's never there. Washington, pretender. Just too young right now. Jaden's got to take his lumps. The defense has got to get a lot better before I can consider them a contender. The Rams, if they were to get in, I guess you give them a puncher's chance just because of their experience. But, this is the first week against Buffalo that they've looked like what we might have expected them to look like a little bit with all their weapons together. So we'll see if they can hold it up Thursday night when they go to San Francisco, because that's the type of game, not because San Francisco's good, because we know that San Francisco's hurt and injured and all that. But this is the type of game that if you want to be a playoff team, you have to put a stamp on that game.
Yeah, and this kind of game that the Rams will lose.
Yeah. And Mr. Logical said the Falcons are out of here.
Yeah, putting up 44 points against Buffalo and then a short week against a division opponent. Two guys that seem to have the same type of coaching personality, coaching swag.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the game they'll just drop. It'll just
Right.
be one of those 24-18 games out of nowhere.
Yeah, you see that, Mike? You know what I'm saying? Rathman out here listening to push-ups. You know, I asked him about the Falcons. He said, the Rams got you wiped down. Washington got you wiped down. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? But yeah, but that's where we are. You know what I'm saying? Contender or pretender or pretender or contender, you know. So, of course, there's more. The field is set. We, by God, have us a college football playoff.
Pull up my bracket.
It is final. Oh, I got you. It's finally here. You know, like I don't know what to do with any of this.
I love it. I love the complaints. I love the whining that's going on. I love the BS that I've been reading, the BS I've been hearing. I love Cam Newton's BS statement that he made, which is just SEC bias up and down. If you want to have the national championship strictly be an SEC team, then at the end of the SEC championship, whoever that team is, they win it. You go ahead and hang a banner for them as the national champion. But as the real people and the real fans look at the sport, we're going to look at the entire playoffs. People are already mad about the 12-team format because it didn't play out the way that they wanted. That's fine. It is what it is. It's never going to be the way you want. I didn't like the 14-team playoff in the NFL because it's 32 teams. You letting 45% of the league in. I didn't like the play-in.
Quick maths.
You're letting 66% of the league in. You got 20 teams in the playoff run. Everybody don't deserve a shot. But at 12, you divvy it up, and then you want to give every SEC school a shot. There's still people clamoring for South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama. I'm like, well, one of those teams lost to the other two. So you gotta find some kind of criteria that you can rest on, that you can eliminate some people. Everybody can't get into the club. It's a max capacity. The fire marshal doesn't allow for you to just let everybody in. So SMU, people I think that was one of the hooks people try to lock in. They lost 2 games and they were tied in the final 2 minutes of both of those games. ACC championship kick at the buzzer. And they were down and came back. And it's their first year in the conference. Certain things have to be rewarded. You can't just give everybody a shot because of the history of their team. 12 teams is a lot, but 4 teams wasn't enough. And if you knew if it was 8, it would only be SEC schools. So you got to extend it to 12 just to give some kind of variance to the teams in it. Because I heard one pundit, I forgot what the podcast, he's like, we all know it should just be Big Ten and SEC schools in this tournament.
All this
but I'm
bracket
like, well,
shows
Oregon
me.
was Pac-12. Oregon was a Pac-12 team that went to the Big Ten and won it. The Big
Arizona
12
State
was a Pac-12 team.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we got SMU. They were Conference USA or
AAC.
AAC.
Yeah, they were the
They went
Americans.
to the ACC and had the lead. That field goal against Michigan overtime. Never know what happens. Texas came from Big 12. They played no defense. And you just can run up and down on them. And they go to the vaunted SEC. Oh, they didn't play any top schools. Well, the top schools didn't play each other. They still lost games too. And Texas was in a championship game there. So, like I said, I get it. Indiana, they did their thing, and they ran to the Big Ten, and they came out 11-1. They deserved their shot. It's not their fault that their conference was really, really good. They didn't need anyone to argue for them. They didn't need coaches from schools that lost 3 games to go to Twitter every 2.5 days talking about, I'm talking about Lane Kiffin. The SEC coaches can't have it both ways, and I put this on the page earlier. You cannot clamor to be in the tough conference, get the money and the TV and the notoriety and the popularity from being in a tough conference, and then complain about the losses you get because you play in a tough conference. You got to own it. In his tweet, he cited Georgia's win over Clemson as an argument for his team. You can't do that. like Joe Budden says, everybody's a killer. What the fuck is all the punks? Just because you're from a tough neighborhood doesn't make you tough. You just live in a tough block. And every once in a while you get in fights. But the last couple of times we see you fight, you got stomped out. You don't get a chance to come to the main event because you keep losing these fights. You had opportunities to win. I mean, you lost to Kentucky.
4-8 Kentucky. That lost to Louisville.
Lost to Florida.
That lost to Louisville from the same conference that you tried to shit on. Miami, from that same conference that you tried to shit on, went into the swamp where you lost and dominated. Let's talk about your brother for a second. Your brother over in Tuscaloosa that got beat by a Vanderbilt team that lost to Georgia State. I did not say Georgia. I did not say Georgia Tech. I said Georgia State. And Mr. Logical, I just said Kentucky was 4-8. Georgia State was 3-9 in the fucking Sun Belt. They won one game in the Sun Belt Conference, but they beat the team that beat Alabama. So let me tell you something else. Conference championships, right? We already said it. Conference championship games are nothing but money grabs.
Absolutely.
And you know what? If we just want to use this season as like a short synopsis of why, give me a second here.
Mike about to get in his bag.
So Oregon, the only undefeated team in the country, they went undefeated in the Big Ten. Why we need a championship game? Boise went undefeated in the Mountain West. Why we need a conference championship game? SMU went undefeated in the ACC. Why we need a conference championship game? Army went undefeated in the American. Why we need a conference championship game? Texas was the only team in the SEC to lose one game in the conference. Why do we need a championship game? Because sponsors need money. And when you take that back, let me stop the bullshit right now because I know everybody's going to say, but Notre Dame doesn't play in a conference. They get to sit at home while everybody else plays a conference championship game. Well, so did Alabama and Ole Miss, and you want them in. So did South Carolina, and you want them in. Notre Dame, I ain't even going to sit up here and act like Notre Dame got the toughest schedule every year. But Notre Dame is the one team that you can say plays a team from the SEC, the Big Ten. They play 5 from the ACC every year due to contract. They play against option teams in Navy. They played Army this year as well for good measure. So let's stop that conversation right now. You don't like Notre Dame not being in the conference? Step up to the plate and beat them. So that's second of all. You know what I'm saying? Third of all, you know what I'm saying? Ole Miss, not only did you lose to Kentucky, you lost to LSU, who lost to USC. Alabama, you lost by 21 to Oklahoma, and the very next week, that same LSU team beat Oklahoma by 20. At one point this season, the Vanderbilt team that beat you was Texas's best win. And don't even get me started on Texas, because look, Texas A&M is their best win? That's the only team they beat in the SEC that had a winning SEC record this year. And I'm supposed to believe this is a national title contender when they couldn't even beat Georgia with Carson Beck dangling his arm? I'm supposed to believe this team is going to win the national title? So as I look at this,
listen, that's all come down to the preseason rankings. That's the thing. I think the SEC schools felt like, because everyone kept saying this stat, Bama's 3-1 against ranked teams. And I brought up the Miami point last week. When Miami played Syracuse was 8-3, unranked. Meanwhile, all the SEC schools with 2 or 3 losses were still ranked. That's how Bama and teams in the SEC get these ranked wins, because they keep a team like Mississippi State could be 4-2. But if they got a game against Bama or Ole Miss coming up, they'll be at 25. Army will be 6-0. They'll be 26, waiting on the outside, waiting for that game to end, and then they'll bump them up after the following week, after they get the win.
Wait, you know what's funny?
Get the win, and that's the whole thing. Because I like, as far as the bracket goes, I think this is the most as far as like I said, the 16-team pot that the committee was going to get, Ole Miss, Alabama, South Carolina had one too many losses to try to justify. That's why everything that they're saying now doesn't make any sense. And I get that Texas didn't play a strong schedule. Oregon didn't play a very strong schedule. Ohio State had a couple of losses.
Oh, yes, they did.
Oregon?
Yeah, they played two teams in this bracket right here.
Okay, I get that. But that's the same conference. I get it. But like I said, Georgia played some tough games. But when Georgia was like on the verge, when Georgia had 2 losses and Indiana was undefeated, people were trying to get Georgia in over Indiana. So it's like they're already setting a precedent trying to get the SEC schools, and I get it. And that I think Ole Miss, Ole Miss head coach mainly, because I haven't seen many people post about it. Ole Miss's head coach, Bama fans, and some other people who were trying to clamor for South Carolina, they were trying to talk those 3, and it's like, yo, those 3 cancel each other out because of the way their season played out. If Alabama beats Oklahoma, they're good to go. They're in.
Yeah, they're in. And actually, if you want to count this, the championship game, Oregon played 3 teams in this bracket. They played Ohio State, Penn State, and Boise. You know what I'm saying? But I'm just saying. But what's funny about stats? The funny thing about stats are, if you listen to me and you listen to ESPN, on one side you get some facts, and on the other side you get some bullshit. Because what ESPN kept putting on the screen when they were comparing Alabama and SMU was their records against teams over 500, and that's why they were like, "Oh, Bama's 3-1." So on. But if I reduce that and go add the teams that are 500, OU 6-6, Vandy 6-6. That's why ESPN ain't put that shit on the screen.
Yeah.
That's why
it doesn't fit the narrative, and that's what I'm saying. Once they got the 3 losses,
the SEC that they got a contract with, by the way.
Excuse me. Once those teams or any team got the 3 losses, it was going to take a hell of a lobbying agreement, a hell of a consultant firm to get you into this 12. Like I said, I figured the committee was going to try to get Bama in. I didn't think Bama was the best of the 3 options, even though they beat South Carolina head-to-head. I just felt like Alabama had lost a little bit of their luster. And if you're looking at them playing, I was like, they were getting dominated. It wasn't like they were in these games. They looked completely discombobulated in their 3 losses. And like I said, in their best win against Georgia, they had a 28-0 lead and had to come back. No one brings that up. Like, the pundits just simply say, Bama beat Georgia. Yeah, they had a 4-touchdown lead and lost the lead.
Oh, Ole Miss put that thing on Georgia. They put it on their forehead. But I know I keep bashing Oklahoma, but one last thing. So they went 6-6. They beat Bama by 21. They went 6-6. 2 of those wins are Maine and Temple. These are your heroes. So when I first looked at this bracket, I know a lot of people are out here talking about, oh, look at this. The conference champs shouldn't get automatic buys because XYZ, they aren't the best team, so on. So
they don't
you have to have some kind of structure. You have to have some kind of structure. Just like the NFL, we just talked about it, right? Tampa would host Minnesota today, even though Minnesota's 11-2 and Tampa's only 7-6, because winning has to matter. Winning your division, winning your conference, whatever it is. If that's the case, then abolish it. Don't have any conferences. Just have 134 contracted teams, if you will. But when I look at this bracket, for example, I look at Oregon at number 1. Okay, they're the undefeated team in the country. Only one. That makes perfect sense to me. Georgia, you want to say the SEC is the toughest conference and they won the SEC? Okay, I can buy that at number 2. Now, if you got a problem with Boise at number 3,
who do you put there?
Then you tell just going off of how things played out. You know what I'm saying? You tell Clemson not to lose to Louisville. That's simple. You tell Clemson not to lose to South Carolina. And there's your 3 seed. But the games have to matter. The results have to matter.
You need that format that locks in something.
It has to be structured.
Everything else can be influenced by conjecture, positioning, because
and this is the first year of it. That don't mean it's going to be like this next year.
The chairman, Ward Manuel. Oh yeah, Ward Manuel. He said he had one statement last week basically saying, "Hey, the rankings are set. There's not much anybody can do to change anything." And then they watched the game and they watched SMU and they thought, "I think SMU deserves more of a shot than Bama."
Meanwhile, saying that they redo the rankings every week.
Some of the things they just need to be a little bit more honest. I would personally like a reseeding after the first round. So if we're looking at 8-9 or the 9-8 matchup, 12-5, 11-6, and then the 10-7 matchup. If all 10, 11, 12, and 9 win, then I want to reseed it to where 12 will play 1, 11 will play 2, 10 will play 3, and 4 will play 7, or however it's played out.
Yeah, highest plays lowest, and you go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember early in this year when you said, because I don't know if we said it on the pod, if we said it.
Oh, we definitely said it on the pod when we did our preview. The example that I used was, what if you're Ohio State? I remember what I said now. Yeah. What I said was, if you're Ohio State and you're number 1, and then your 8-9 is Georgia against a Penn State team that you beat already this year, that's going to be motivated to get revenge against you. That is unfair from the standpoint of if your number 4 is somebody like, say, Tennessee.
We were thinking Boise State was going to be your 12 seed.
Right. Yeah, they were going to be the 12. Yeah, Boise was going to be the 12 in that scenario. So your 5 would have played Boise. And then just going off of perception, they would have played the weakest Power 4 conference champion, since that would have been the 4 seed. Not saying that team is automatically the worst, but just perception-wise, being the 4 seed, they're the worst of the power champions. So as the 5 seed, that was the sweet spot. Because even looking at this bracket now, and like I said, it's year 1, so I don't want to overreact. But if I'm Oregon right now and I'm looking at, I get the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee. You know what I'm saying? And hypothetically, Texas, if Texas beats Clemson, you got the 12 seed and the weakest power conference champion, the power conference champion that the committee put Boise in front of.
So you also have this another thing that is kind of a setback. So Ohio State's getting a home game, Texas getting a home game, Penn State's getting a home game, Notre Dame's getting a home game. Oregon's playing their game in the Rose Bowl. So it's Oregon. They're playing their game in California. Arizona couldn't get the Fiesta Bowl because it would have been a home game in the second round, even though these other teams that didn't do as well as them per the ranking system all were just obliged to get home games.
Yeah, so Georgia gets the Sugar Bowl.
So Arizona couldn't play the Fiesta Bowl because it had been a home game, so they got to play the Peach Bowl. So Arizona can end up playing Clemson in Atlanta. So tell me, what's going to be the advantage there? Then you got Boise. They're playing at Arizona. I think that's only a couple of states away. It's not too crazy.
From it's Boise still far, but yeah, not so bad, I guess.
But there's 2 states.
Relatively speaking, out. Yeah.
Yeah, you can make that drive in a caravan in a couple of days.
No illegals. We're not saying that. But
Georgia gets the Sugar Bowl. They're getting their game in New Orleans against an Indiana team, a team from Indiana. So they're getting their game down south too. So it's
well, not only that, but going back to my point about the 1 and the 5, look at the 2 and the 3. Georgia gets the winner of this Notre Dame Indiana game. Whoever wins that 6-11 is going to feel great playing against Boise. You know what I mean? And that's the thing. You know what I mean? Is that like I'm not saying manipulate the bracket. I'm just saying that it has to make sense because like
I think it makes sense per the logic that they had already. Like I said,
there was no logic.
we talk about these rules ahead of time. Like the whole, if the offensive team fumbles at the back of the end zone, why should that be a touchback? I'm like, because that's the rule. It's the rule that everybody knows when the season starts. Like you enter the season knowing this is the case. Catching the ball, going through the ground, holding on to the ball. We may dislike the rule, but everyone knows what it is clearly, and it has examples of how it works. So this was the format. They might tweak it. I personally don't think they should because I don't want too much influence. I need something standard. I need a standardized process, and you can tweak maybe the reseeding, but that's about it.
Yeah, I just think that it's year one.
The highest ranked conference winners. I like that because it does give you this variable.
Yeah, I think it's the year one, and we can't overreact. We just can't overreact. It's year one.
People overreacting because it's this narrative that there's this narrative out there that college football fans don't want to watch college football games if the team on the helmet isn't one of these blue bloods.
Yeah, you got dickheads like Cam Newton out here talking about don't nobody want to watch Indiana, don't nobody want to watch Arizona State, and it's the same things we talk about with the NBA. When you get to nobody
it doesn't
wants to watch
any sense. Like, what do you mean? Like, what does that mean?
Like, do you like football or not?
Exactly.
That's it.
This team earned it. It's not like it's a raffle. It wasn't like, hey, everyone put their team helmet in this ping pong machine, and if your helmet pops up, you get in. They played 12 games. They won 11 of them. SMU played 13 games. They won 11 of them. Boise State played 13 games. They won 12 of them. They have probably in some people's ballots the leading Heisman candidate on their team. So it's like you want football. You want good football. I want to see Boise State versus Penn State because Cam Newton forgets like Auburn wasn't that good until he got there that 1 year, and they've been mediocre pretty much. They had a couple of good runs, but he was a dynamic player. Like, what if people say, you know what? Auburn's been so bad recently, we don't care that they have the potential number one pick and a Heisman Trophy player and are undefeated. They had to come back against Alabama in the Iron Bowl. We don't want them in the national championship game. What if someone said that, and then a committee had the power to not put them in strictly off of that statement? I think that's my problem.
So when you first saw the bracket,
they love meritocracy until they don't get the results.
Ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit?
I love it.
What was your first reaction when you saw the bracket? When you first, like, when it was unveiled, what was the first thing you took away?
When I saw the bracket, because it was already on, and I finally got settled in, I started watching it. I looked and see if SMU made it, and if Alabama didn't. And then when SMU made it, I'm like, okay. It was, like I said, I know I keep picking on Alabama as an example, but that is the example of, like, they said it's like the meritocracy.
They lost to Alabama.
You work.
So they lost to Oklahoma.
Like, if you do the work, you should be rewarded with the opportunity for the promotion. SMU did the work. It's not as if they were an SEC school and they went in the ACC and then dominated. They were a smaller conference school, went to the ACC. It's like, I get it. Everybody didn't play a dominant schedule. Texas didn't. Miami didn't. I think the Miami vitriol was a little bit more than I wanted, but I think people had to dump on Miami in order to levitate one of the three SEC schools that people felt were left out. One of those three lost.
Yeah, you can't make it on your own merit, so you have to tear somebody else down.
You got to tear Miami down, and like I said, Miami gets a stop on that last drive against Syracuse. Does that make their schedule that any much better? No.
No, because then Syracuse wouldn't be ranked anyway.
Yeah, so it's like they would be, but they'd be in. They'd be in with no rank wins. You know what I mean? So it's like they would have been in anyway. So like there's gonna be teams like Boise State. If Boise State has 2 losses, they probably don't get in because of where they start. We understand that as the season plays out. But when we got to the end, and everybody hit their check marks, even though everyone didn't get the same list of requirements. Some schools were allowed a variance that every other schools didn't get. Ohio State had an option that other teams didn't have. For instance, Miami. Miami's 10-2, Ohio State's 10-2. Ohio State's last game was a loss, and it was a bad loss. Miami lost on the road. Ohio State lost at home, but it was like, oh, that was a rivalry game. So we'll let it slide.
And to Residente's point, Bama played a 5-7 Wisconsin team, a 6-6 South Florida team, same record as that Oklahoma team that beat Alabama and that Vanderbilt team that beat Alabama, and they played Mercer. That was the out of conference schedule. Ole Miss.
When you have a schedule that you know is weak, when you know your schedule is weaker, when you look at it preseason, it's like we have a schedule that we have to go 11-1 with. Georgia had a schedule that allowed them to go 10-2. They were allowed, like Ohio State had a schedule that allowed them to go 10-2, and then Indiana being a really good team and Penn State being really good this year helped them out. But they had wiggle room to go 10-2. My Alabama didn't have the wiggle room to go 9-3 because they didn't lose to Georgia and they didn't lose to South Carolina. If they would have beat everybody else and 2 of their 3 losses were Georgia and South Carolina, then maybe the argument would have been a little bit more.
You can say, look at my tough schedule. You know what I mean?
Look at my tough schedule. I lost tough games.
I still wouldn't let you in, but you know what I'm saying? But
you would have a bigger argument. So SMU's like, listen, we lost to BYU, who was ranked in the top 10 for a lot of the year. And we were in our, new conference. So hey, we get our shot.
Hey, Rez, I'll give you one guess who Ole Miss opened the season up against this year. So what stood out to me when I first saw the bracket was Notre Dame and Indiana playing each other. They're in the same state and haven't played each other since 1991. So like little old me that remember that game in 1991 was like, hey, that's awesome. My second thought was, what they going to do with Georgia? Because, yes, they're the SEC champion. Or you can't put them number 1 just because Oregon's the only undefeated team. But I was like, what do you do with Georgia now with this Carson Beck situation? But, they put them at they put them at number 2 anyway. Then
should they be?
No.
Should they be? They should be 4 without their starting quarterback.
The problem is that you can't put Boise in. No, I said first game, Mike. First game of the season. Like, no, you can't. No, because in that situation, you're kind of talking about putting Boise in front of Georgia, and I don't know if you can do that.
Well, they kept FSU out because they didn't have a quarterback, even though
but it was only 4 teams. It's a little different. You know what I mean? The third thing that stood out to me was why they do Texas like that. Clemson about to walk into DKR, stomp a mud hole and walk it dry. Cade Klubnik from Austin, Texas. Oh man, it just writes itself. That's why they did that game. Probably.
Where would you put them if you would you put them?
Well, see, this is this is my thing, and this is where you get into college football because college football doesn't have any logic. So, for example, people were arguing about South Carolina being in instead of you look that up, Mike. You know what I'm saying? I said guess. I didn't say look it up. I knew the answer. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, I lost my train of thought now. Oh, so Clemson. So we were talking about South Carolina. They should be in, and then I would say, but they lost to Bama and Ole Miss. So I can't put them in if I'm not going to put one of those 2 teams in. So for Clemson's situation, they have the conference title. Why not put them in front of SMU? So you could have just simply put Clemson at 11 and put SMU at 12.
And you have 2 Texas teams playing.
I mean, not on purpose, but yeah, like, you know what I mean?
I know you looked it up.
So Mr. Logical.
I think that being on purpose wouldn't have been a bad idea because you have 2 Indiana teams playing, and it would make sense since Clemson beat SMU if you swap them. It wouldn't blow my mind to have them at 11 and 12.
So Mr. Logical, this is Ole Miss's out of conference schedule. They opened up the season. Whoa, whoa, pause, pause. They opened up the season with the mighty Paladins of Furman. You know, they won that game 76-0. That's a real score. They played Middle Tennessee State. You know what I'm saying? I give y'all one more guess. Don't look it up, Mike. What city is Middle Tennessee State in? All right. They won that game 52-3. They went to Wake Forest, you know, and they won that game 40-6. They played Georgia Southern from the Sun Belt, and they won that game 52-13. Where does tough out of conference schedule at? At least South Carolina plays Clemson out of conference.
He was banking on SEC strength of schedule being the strength of schedule metric works in an argument for your top team with the least amount of losses being represented. It can't work for all of them because everybody's strength of schedule in the SEC is going to be higher. You can't just disregard the fact that other teams played their 12 games as well. That's the problem. It's like your strength of schedule at Ole Miss, yeah, it could be 22, could be 21, whatever it is. But of that, you lost 3 of your 12 games.
And for those of you playing at home, and for those of you playing at home, if you guessed that Middle Tennessee State plays their football in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, you are correct. You know, but and by the way,
they played all those games at home.
Yeah, Georgia Southern plays in Statesboro, by the way, Statesboro, Georgia. But you know, but as I was as I was looking at the bracket, then I said, "Wow, they really put Boise at number 3," and it's a damn shame that Boise and number 1 only undefeated team Oregon don't even get a fucking home game in the playoffs. Why am I the number 1 seed if I can't even have a home game?
Listen, heavy is the head that wears a crown. Like I said, you get a couple extra weeks off. You just got to hope your fans travel. I saw something today that said the most expensive ticket at the Indiana Notre Dame game is $4,800. The cheapest ticket is like $990.
Somebody want to see the Hoosiers, don't they?
You got to hope that the crypto money, the trust fund money, the Capital One credit cards, American Express cards all get accepted. The bearer bonds, the travel vouchers, whatever people need to pay for tickets to fill these stadiums, that's what you're going to have to get. Playing their game at the Rose Bowl, like, I mean, you're going to get you're going to get something like that anyway, because in previous years, the 4 teams were playing on the road anyway. So, like, having another home game, like, I'd rather have a free week versus a home game. Like, listen, you want to see us come down from Oregon to California, watch the game.
Hey,
but
quick
why
question
risk
for y'all out
losing
there?
The tournament just to have a game at home?
Quick question for y'all out there. How many of y'all out there watching the NBA Cup tonight? So my next observation when looking at the bracket, the Milwaukee Bucks advanced, by the way. You know, OKC's up 12 with 3 minutes left. My next observation was, what are we going to get from Ohio State? You know, the last time we saw Ohio State, they were getting their shit pushed in by the Wolverines, training day style. And now they got Tennessee coming in with one of the best defensive lines in the country against their beat-up offensive line. They're coming in broken because they just got out-toughed and out-muscled by their rival. You know what I mean? Like, we've been hearing about, is Ryan Day going to be fired for the last week and a half, and we still got another 10 days or so before this game happens. So from that standpoint, I went into like analysis mode, and I was like, what Ohio State do we even get? Like, you know, you're at home, it's awesome, but you were at home when Michigan came through too. So do you think, Mr. Logical, do you think that it's a good thing for Ohio State to have this time to kind of regroup? Or do you think if you're Ohio State, you'd rather just play right away?
I think it's time. It's a good, like I said, after they lost, at least they don't have to risk a third loss in the Big Ten championship and risk not making the college football playoff. I don't know how much of that
I
was
think they would
really
have
on
still
the
made it though,
table.
because if you look at it, like all these Penn State lost the conference title game, SMU lost the conference title game.
Yeah, but that would have been you. You would have gotten out muscled and then come right back. Especially if you play Oregon tough before you lost by a point. If they don't do the sneaky stuff with the penalties and still in the time off the clock, you have an opportunity to kick a field goal. But say you come back out and now Oregon beats you 34-13. The committee has to take that into consideration. Like, yo, maybe this team isn't in line to participate in this championship run, and maybe
Georgia
they do
was going
something
to get in with
crazy
3.
like bring Army into it or something. I don't know if that was the case, but a lot of other things would have to play out. But like I said, at least they don't have to risk that third loss, because now you're sitting at 2 losses. One was to the number 1 team in the country. The other one was to your rival. You beat Indiana and Penn State in conference, who were both undefeated. You gave them their only loss. So you can rest your hat on that. You can rest your hat on actually being physically rested.
Who gave
and now going in and play in Tennessee?
Who gave Purdue their schedule? They had to play Notre Dame, Penn State, Oregon, and Ohio State.
They knew Purdue wasn't gonna produce, so they just go ahead, just play football games so we can get 3 teams into the college football playoff. You guys have got to just be, sacrificial lambs. But like, if I'm Ohio State, I feel confidence against Tennessee. If you just go back to what you do best, you have threats passing the ball, get them in position of where they are making plays downfield.
Yeah.
That's it. Don't try to be somebody else.
So Residente wilding out now. But
put Army in. I think Army probably had a real argument. Army could have been in.
Hey, Purdue was 1-11 though. But now this one will really get Mike going, if he wasn't going already. So you mean to tell me that the school with one of the biggest cheating scandals in NCAA history is trying to hire the biggest cheater in NFL history? What is going on in Chapel Hill?
I don't understand it at all. I'm going to rely on your expertise because I don't understand why.
I got nothing.
I mean, I know Bill's been out in these streets chasing these young women. Maybe he just wanted to be in the environment with a lot of young co-eds. I think his girlfriend's like 26 or something like that. Maybe tough schedule should be enough. I don't know why you would go to North Carolina. And you said something earlier. I thought you had read it. I don't know, because I kind of perused with the article. You said that you think that he goes there so that they keep his son on his head.
Well, that's what he put in his negotiation. That I didn't make that up.
Okay.
So part of North Carolina talking to him, or I guess let me rephrase. Part of him considering to take the job at North Carolina is that they name his son the head coach in waiting. So that's all Bill Belichick. That,
if I'm North Carolina, I'm not signing up for that.
His son is the defensive coordinator out at Washington right now under Jed Fish. Came down from the Patriots and everything. But
they should just hire the son as head coach, hire Bill as an advisor to help him. Like, at least that way, when I fire him, I can get rid of both of y'all. Like, why would I agree? Like, why would I put myself? I'm the school. I have the money. I'm North Carolina. Even if I'm not a big football program, I'm fucking North Carolina.
Well, I was trying to think,
why am I going to placate to a guy who hasn't coached college football and was fired from his last NFL job. And the rumor has it the dude calling games for Fox was the reason that you're winning games. Like, why am I going to leverage my future for you?
Well, that's why I was wondering,
And I like Bill, but I'm like, why would I do that from UNC?
Well, that's why I was wondering from the standpoint of, I don't know what kind of cachet Bill Belichick would have with high schoolers or in college football players. Because yes, he's a 6-time Super Bowl champion as a head coach. He's got 2 as a defensive coordinator. But at the same time, a lot of these kids don't know the Patriots in that way. You know, they remember Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl with Tampa. So the moment that he tries to yell at them or go hard on them, pause, you know, in that Eric Bieniemy kind of way, I just see kids transferring.
Off the bat. Like, you hear some of the Julian Edelman stories, you're going to wear those fucking red gloves. You're going to give me all these holding penalties. I don't know if a kid is like, I wasn't around. Like, I wasn't born when you won your first few Super Bowls.
Can he dumb down his defense enough for college players? Or is this one of those Jimbo Fisher trying to play this antiquated offense from the 80s that nobody wants to run?
I think he can, because his defense didn't look like a lot of other NFL teams. Like, he was playing with big linebackers. He had third down linebackers. Like I said, if you just want your son to get the job, then help negotiate for him, and then do the Bill Callahan and the Mike Shanahan thing, where you just sit in the booth, advise. You get a special title. They pay you, I mean, you know, $300,000 a year, whatever, to just be an advisor, whatever the going rate is for that position. But I'm not signing up for Bill Belichick to try to negotiate. He has to get guys their junior year in high school. 16, 17-year-olds are going to sit across from Bill Belichick. And maybe if you really know football, or if your parents are really into football and they just kind of respect the fact that he is an all-time great head coach, and lock you in. But his name doesn't resonate through the college dorms. Like Nick Saban can go back to college right now. Nick Saban could probably go to UNC and make a shake, because I think he has those avenues. He knows how to gain access to these guys. So, like I said, you got a lot of guys. You get them on the radar junior year, and you try to get them to commit before they go into their senior year, before they have like that explosive year, because they're like a year bigger. They're probably, you know, better players. You lock them in, and then they go have this outstanding senior year, and then they come to your school.
Nick is great, Mike. Don't start. Nick is great. Bill Belichick is a damn good coach. I don't know if he's great in the way that Nick Saban is, you know, because once Tom Brady did leave, I have to acknowledge what happened there. I have to acknowledge what happened pre-Tom Brady.
Forever, Mike. Sorry, my bad. Like, Nick, listen, as a retiree, I can tell you at some point it's like, yeah, I'm done here. I'm done dealing with, especially when you were doing it as long as Nick Saban. He was like, I can see the writing on the wall. You don't want to have I don't want to deal with transfers out. Like a guy who gets divorced. A guy goes out there, gets divorced, a woman, they get divorced, and then they meet somebody else and they start a new relationship, and people are like, hey, you getting married again? They're like, no, I'm not. Like, why not? Like, listen, I did it. I understand it. This is what I want to do now. So Nick,
running around saying bitch box.
I want to talk football. I don't want to talk NIL deals with a guy who hasn't caught a single pass for the school that I've coached to multiple championships. Like, imagine that like that power dynamic for a guy who's had pleading autonomy for his career. And that's what I'm talking about with Bill. Bill was the GM. He was making the draft picks. He was cutting guys. I think he was negotiating contracts. He's not gonna, like, if I'm a kid that's like, I think Anthony Hardaway, I heard him in an interview. He was talking about guys. He was like, it's hard to coach with the NIL stuff now. Granted, coaches, you just got to figure out to make it work. It can work. You just got to get out of your way to make it work. But he said, I got guys on my team that, like, you hear about guys that figure, you know what, I'm gonna stay in college one more year and get another 2.5, 3 million, or I'm gonna do great at Memphis or whatever school, and I'm gonna transfer to another school. They're gonna break me off for another 4 or 5 million. Because if I get to the league, I might be a 13th guy in the bench.
Yeah, you really
It might
think
not be
Bill
getting any
Belichick is
bread.
going to be here for that? I mean, he the same age as Saban, the same age as Matt Brown.
Yeah, so it's like and as far as UNC is like, why are you out here recruiting someone who's probably, if you're the AD and you're 40, 45, you're athletic director, you're somewhere in that age range. Bill Belichick is probably older than your pops. I'm 43. My dad's 68, 67, going on 68. So it's like, if I'm hiring someone, if I'm working at Temple or Rutgers and I'm like looking for a head coach, why would I hire a guy older than my pops? Much as I know my pops like chill, you don't want to be stressed out dealing with teenagers. And he's 67. He got a teenage grandson. I don't think he'd want to deal with him and his recruiting, let alone trying to recruit 30 of them. Like, this doesn't make any sense. Traveling to games, having conversations and text messages. Like, he's a 70-something-year-old man. That this is not his world.
So,
If
so
you want to
Mike,
hire his son, just flat out hire his son. Don't do all the other showcase. Just like, yeah, we think you have coaching pedigree. We know you have a great advisor. We want to hire you.
so Mike, I don't know, so for the Nick Saban thing, I guess it's sort of like the Ashton Genty thing, where he's playing at Boise State, playing in the Mountain West, and he's running for all these yards. People are criticizing, saying that he's playing a weak schedule, so on and so forth. But then you can retort with that and say, who else doing it? Who else did it in the Mountain West? What other Mountain West running back did what Ashton Genty is doing right now? So the same thing with Nick Saban. Yes, he was at Bama. He was at the football factory. Bama sells itself, but so does Ohio State. What Ryan Day doing right now? You know what I mean? And I think Ryan Day is a good coach.
It's a football factory because the head coaches come in there and they build these guys into football players. Because Auburn's in the same recruiting space. Georgia's in the same recruiting space. Georgia Tech's in the same recruiting space. It's just like your program has Oregon and Oregon State.
I mean, hell, Bobby Bowden only won 3. Urban Meyer, won 3? And Nick Saban's got 6, 7 of those things. Saying, and so I mean, like, yeah, like Nick Saban, people studied his defenses. And same thing with Bill Belichick. People studied their defenses. The same way that we send people to, not necessarily. Like, Bama's players are maybe better, like, when you talk about, like, in the trenches and you add those type of things to it. But Ohio State didn't have Garrett Wilson, CJ Stroud, you know what I'm saying? Like, Olave, they got a Marvin Harrison Jr., they got a Buka right now, Jeremiah Smith,
Justin Fields.
You know what I'm saying? Robert Smith going all the way back in the day, Chris Carter. You know what I mean? like Ohio.
They've had equal caliber players. Granted, if we went like line for line and stat for stat, we had like some assistants here doing all the points. But they went line for line. Like Bama had a run where they weren't as high. They got Saban. Saban's a great coach because everybody's not doing what he's doing with this. Everyone has money. Every team down south has the same recruiting range. They all have the same level of popularity. Like, if a kid's trying to play college football, he knows where LSU is. He knows Arkansas, knows Texas, knows all these other schools. It's just they go to Bama because Bama turns out championship.
If Ohio State players are not better than Bama, they're the next best thing. Like, you know what I mean? There ain't that much of a gap between Bama's players and Ohio State's players.
It's not enough of a gap to have like a statement like, oh, they're better. Like, if the gap, honestly, if we did the math and everything else, they probably have the same amount of Heisman Trophy winners. They probably have the same amount of guys who won Outland Awards and linebackers awards and corner. They probably have the very similar numbers. It's not going to be like Heisman. Alabama has 50 Heisman. No, granted, 50 is outrageous. Like, 50
Ohio State has the second most Heisman winners at 7, Alabama has 4.
Okay, so we look at your interior lineman awards, your Biletnikovs, your running back awards, all these other awards.
I mean, bro, like we just had a conversation the other night. Chris Carter went to Ohio State, and we were talking about how he's one of the best receivers in NFL history. Like, what receiver does Bama have that's close to Chris Carter?
Julio Jones is probably the closest you're really gonna get,
and he ain't there. As great as he is, he ain't there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then, running backs, yeah, Bama might got that one. You know what I mean? They got running backs,
Robert Smith, Eddie George, top running backs. Ezekiel Elliott had a great run before, he just couldn't get out of his own way. He had a nice little 7 years. I mean, his Ezekiel Elliott's
but you know what else too? But you know what else too? Ohio State also has the only 2-time Heisman winner. You know what I'm saying? So it's like
Bama, Ohio State.
No, we're just talking about Bama and Ohio State. But if you're talking about Saban had number 1 recruiting classes for who knows how long,
year after year after year.
And the only person that was, so like from
half the battle in college football.
But from that standpoint,
bring in the talent. He did it every year.
But from that standpoint, Ohio State was still top 5. You know what I'm saying? So unless you think the difference between the number 1 recruiting class and the number 5 recruiting class is golfs, I don't believe that.
Yeah, it's a player here, a player there. So 4-star that if Alabama doesn't get 1 or 2 4-stars, that maybe they commit to Auburn, and Ohio State gets a guy that was supposed to go to Michigan and he comes to Ohio State, it'll flip from 1 to 5 or 2 to 4 or 2 to 3.
How many years was Saban in Miami? And you got to remember too, what the fuck was LSU before Saban went there?
Man got like 7 to 8 rings.
LSU was nothing but the football. LSU was nothing but the football uniform version of the Lakers before Nick Saban showed up. What has LSU done?
And not many college coaches do well in the NFL.
Just like Florida. Florida has a lot of talent. You know what I mean?
Urban Meyer's a great coach, did not do great at Jacksonville.
But guess what? Florida, you know what I'm saying? They say they have the arrogance of Notre Dame and the trophy case of Wake Forest. You know what I'm saying? Like, but Nick Saban, he was only in the Dolphins, what, a year?
And a half, and then
a year and a half? Like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? So, I mean, we don't know how that would have played out. And he acknowledged that.
Maybe got a couple of seasons.
And he acknowledged
it. And that's why Bill Belichick going to North Carolina doesn't make a lot of sense. But we can't deny Nick's greatness, because even if you don't think he's individually a great coach, you want to break it down. But if you don't think he's
it was a season.
Who is? Who is? Who is the gold standard for greatness if it's not Saban?
Let's see. So the Dolphins went 9-7 his first year. You know, they didn't make the playoffs, but they went 9-7. They came in to 2006 and they finished 6-10 that year. And then he went to Bama.
So he coached 2 seasons.
Yeah. But he went 9-7 in one of those years, but that's not true either. You know what I'm saying? Urban Meyer took Utah to the Sugar Bowl and beat Bama. Beat Nick Saban.
No, Kent Whittingham beat Saban.
Oh, it was Whittingham. My bad. But Urban Meyer got that started though.
Yeah, he was a champion at Bowling Green. He went to Utah, got Alex Smith to a number 1 draft pick, and then went to Florida, beat the vaunted Ohio State team, and then went to Ohio State.
And then won a second title at Florida because he beat Oklahoma.
Yeah, and then with less talent because of the probation, he still was undefeated at Ohio State.
He won the national title with a 3rd-string quarterback.
Who then got drafted off of it.
Yeah, Cardale Jones. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, they lost JT Barrett in preseason that year, or Braxton Miller. Yeah. JT Barrett came in, got injured in the Michigan game, and then Cardale Jones beat Wisconsin 59-0, and then beat Bama in his next game, beat Chip Kelly in the 3rd game.
Like, These guys are good coaches. There's only a hand. Like I think the problem is we have access to too much information, and the great guys are always kind of just put in our face. Pause. And we want to break it down, but you got to understand if you're not going to understand if you not understand, for lack of a better word, if we're not going to use the success of guys that we see clearly, Belichick, Saban, Phil Jackson,
Popovich,
Pat
Riley.
These guys, even Spo to
Chip Kelly.
You had to see, like, if you see it, it's like, okay, if you don't think they're great, then you got to tell me who is, and then you got to let me know what metric are you using to say that this person is not great and these people are. Well, for the most part, the great guys are great at what they do. I think, like I said, we're just kind of just flooded with greatness, and I don't think we respect greatness the way we should. Hence why I don't understand why Bill Belichick is like going to take his legacy down to UNC. It's like, oh, you're a great NFL coach, contrary to all the stuff about Tom Brady and everything else, because Tom Brady had a good couple of years in Tampa Bay, but he also went 8-9. He was yelling at people all the time. It just was, he is an all-time talent, and he's head and shoulders above most quarterbacks that have ever played the game. He is going to shine no matter where he goes. But that doesn't mean Bill Belichick's defense didn't allow for that, didn't allow for those opportunities, because, like I said, we talked about that Rams Super Bowl.
I agree.
Played that game super tight to the vest.
I agree. Jim Harbaugh is a great coach. He's won everywhere that he's gone, but
he doesn't have the resume of Saban.
Right.
He can be great, but he can. We're not saying because Nick is
Andy
great,
Reid's
no
great
one else
too.
is. We are not saying that it's limited to, but it is. There is a guy at the top. There's guys.
Yeah, but you know what? And I'm not even trying to do the Patrick Mahomes thing. But before Patrick Mahomes showed up, Andy Reid was known as the biggest choker in coaching.
These are narratives that have been.
Yeah, he was still a great coach in my eyes, but a lot of people didn't want to give him that title.
5 consecutive NFC title games.
5 consecutive NFC championship games in Philadelphia, made a Super Bowl. Nobody cared.
Had T.O. out there in the Bronco Acre going 9 catches, 122 yards. If Donovan McNabb throws the ball,
like there's greatness. There's greatness. There's great. There's very good, and then you just go down from there. You know what I mean? Like, no, I know they weren't necessarily losing because of Andy, but they absolutely were, because the biggest criticism that he had was, which he still has a problem with, is his clock management. Like, Andy Reid still to this day does not manage the clock correctly.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And
no
when you
narrative with Nick Saban, he just wins.
and with Andy Reid, to your point though, you know what I mean? When you look at some of those teams that he was playing with, I mean, he had Freddie Mitchell, Todd Pinkston as his wide receivers. You know what I mean? So I mean, like, yes, he's a great coach because we saw him do more with less. You know, Nick Saban, like I said, he came to, before LSU, he put Michigan State on the map. You know, like, Michigan State was just little brother. You know what I'm saying? Until they beat Desmond Howard in Michigan that year. Nick Saban was the coach that year. Like, you know, Michigan State, outside of the 1960s, when they won that national title back in 1966, played Notre Dame in that tie that's considered to be the greatest game in college football history by old people. You know what I'm saying? Like, outside of that year, there was no such thing as Michigan State football. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, Saban, you know, he came there and did that. You know what I mean? So, like, there are great coaches, you know, Jay Wright was a great coach, but then NIL came and he was like, I don't want to do this no more.
Yeah, which is fine. Like I said, especially if you've ascended to the level where you are in your sport, whatever it is, whatever your craft is, it's like you want to own the leverage in most conversations, most negotiations. Like, I don't think Bill Belichick is walking into a room with a 37-year-old GM somewhere in the NFL and pleading his case for why he should be the head coach. I just don't think that's happening. It's like, you brought me in. This is what I plan to do with your team. I'm not selling you to me. I'm telling you why your team needs me. And this is why.
And the longer this goes on, he's probably not getting the job the longer this goes on. Well, I
And
mean, he's
honestly, I
72
don't know.
now. I mean, where you
I
want
would
Nick Saban to go? Like, if you put Nick Saban at any Power Four conference team right now,
you put them on Florida State right now, they're in the CFP next year. I guarantee it. If he took the job
absolutely.
today, they're in without a doubt. You can book it.
And that's the difference. You know what I mean? Whereas another great coach might take 2 years to make a dent.
You put Brian Kelly on Florida State right now, 8-4 next
7-5, maybe
year,
8-4.
7-5. You put Chip Kelly in Florida State right now, same thing, 7-5, 8-4. Maybe the offense looks good. You put Nick Saban there, 11-1.
You know
You
what
can
I'm
book
saying?
it.
And as far as Bill Belichick goes, like, you know what I mean? The problem with Bill Belichick is not, it wasn't Bill Belichick the coach. The problem was Bill Belichick the GM. Because he's such a great coach that he was like, go get me Chris Hogan. Go get me this lineman out of UMass that nobody has ever heard of. Because he thought, like, I can coach this guy. And he was right more than he was wrong.
Yeah, and he had a stance that he lived by, and I remember he talked about it a lot in interviews. He's like, "Don't tell me what a guy can't do. Tell me what he can do." So if I got a guy that is a linebacker, but he can't cover in space, cool. I'm not going to call plays where he has to cover Travis
Mm-hmm.
Kelce up the seam.
Right, and
I'm going to put him where.
you always talk about how he would take his number 2 corner and put him on the number 1 wide receiver.
And just double them and put and shift guys that way. Like we talked about, that Rams Super Bowl was a master class in what Bill Belichick can do for a football team. That team was
I mean, they
averaging
did
over
cheat,
30. No, not that one.
the one against Jared Goff.
The one against the Jared Goff Rams.
Okay.
13-3. That team was averaging 31 points a game that year. They scored 54 points against Kansas City. And they scored 3 points in the Super Bowl because of the defensive strategy. And Tom Brady played to that. Tom Brady threw that game. Julian Edelman had 14 catches that game because it's like, okay, you could probably force it to Gronk on this 2nd and 10, but he knew the game plan was don't give them any short fields. Don't put the ball in harm's way at all. We're at a disadvantage offensively. So if you can get Edelman, hit Edelman. If you guys are working, you got like this thing, we'll hit Gronk when we need to. And that's when they got the pass to Gronk down the sideline. But it was like he played into Belichick's plan and they won that Super Bowl 13-3. What's his shock face?
So, the other day, Randy Moss was talking about the while he was wearing the shades and all that kind of stuff. And, so I guess Larry Fitzgerald just came out and said it's because, or he had to step away because he's battling liver cancer. That was my first time seeing it.
Okay, I thought.
Yeah, that was my first time seeing it. That's why
that part, and I thought you saw like you had an update. Like
no. That was just the first time I had saw that, and it just, like wow, that just, okay. Well, ending on a positive note, I guess, trying to end on a positive note here. At the end of the day, Bill Belichick to North Carolina is not official at this moment. It may not even become official, but it's just one of those things that I guess you're just doing your due diligence. You know what I mean? If you're not trying to get the best or what you perceive to be the best, you aren't trying. The same reason that UCF called and asked about Lincoln Riley. They knew they weren't getting Lincoln Riley, but you got to do your due diligence.
Yeah, that makes sense. He knows how to recruit.
Yeah, and not only that, but like I made the joke when we came back on here after we had found out that UCF did that, I was like, hell, they should have just called Ohio State then and check on Ryan Day. Because like I said, I do think that Ryan Day is a good coach. And if you look at his record against everybody else but Michigan,
it's pretty solid. He does have an abundance of talent. that's on par with Bama and other top.
I mean, like I said, but see, that's the thing about narratives, right? That kicker hits that field goal against Georgia. Ryan Day probably has a national title. Game of inches.
TCU. Yeah, they beat TCU. They might not beat them 65-7, but it's probably 42-20.
Something, but yeah. So it just is what it is. We'll see. I mean, I'm here for it. I wouldn't mind seeing Bill Belichick at North Carolina because I'm all about the fuckery. So so sign me up for all of that. But we will be back on Friday with picks, NFL week 15. We'll be back with the college picks next week because the playoff starts late next week. So we'll be back with that as well. But
season ends like the middle of January.
I know, right?
These guys are playing football.
But it's all about the student athlete, right? Like, review, subscribe, share, rate, do all the free things. Do all the good things. He is the one and only Even Kill. Mr. Logical. Don't bring feelings to a fact fight.
Don't do it.
I am. I can't get in the camera. Which way I go? 2-5. We love you. Peace.